The Galactic Empire's invasion fleet lay decimated before the unmatched might of Earth's secret weapon. But before the time dilation cannon became humanity's great trump card against alien domination, it started as an ominous, dark energy anomaly in the bowels of a secret underground lab. Deep beneath the deserts of New Mexico, Dr. Marcus Scott and his team of Earth's top physicists tinkered with chrono-energy matrices and mathematical models of space-time, chasing the dream of time-bending technology. Tsenkethi's spies lurked in the shadows, relaying whispers of humanity's deepening desperation back to the Galactic Empire. For eons, the Tsenkethi had subdued world after world, enslaving populations and strip-mining planets into lifeless husks. Earth stood alone against the alien onslaught, its fleets of ships burning in the cold depths of space, its armies shattered on the front lines. Billions perished beneath the aliens' ruthless iron fist. As the end drew near, Dr. Scott's project became Earth's final Hail Mary, the ultimate weapon, manipulating time itself to turn the tide of the one-sided war. The cannon's first test firing warped space-time in ways Dr. Scott couldn't predict. Localized distortions reverberated through the planetary core, detected by Tsenkethi ship sensors in high orbit. The aliens realized that they had underestimated the subjugated species huddled together on their one small planet of origin. Whoever mastered this temporal technology could dominate the galaxy. The Tsenkethi High Command mobilized an overwhelming armada to crush humanity and pry the time dilation cannon's secrets from mankind's cold dead hands. Dr. Scott knew their darkest hour had arrived. Humanity would stand or fall, live or die, based on the radical potential of his unimaginable new weapon. The survival of the human race depended on bending the immutable laws of time. The battle was on. As the Tsenkethi armada tore through the void of space towards Earth, klaxons blared deep within the secret underground lab. Marcus gritted his teeth, his fingers flying over the control panel of the time dilation cannon. Sweat beaded on his furrowed brow as he raced to fortify the weapon, poring over the perplexing anomalies in the space-time matrices. Unbeknownst to Marcus and his team, the cunning Tsenkethi spy, Mira, slipped through the shadows of the lab, her lithe form darting between humming power conduits and pulsing chrono-energy reactors. With deft fingers, she pried open an access panel, revealing a tangle of wires and circuit boards. A wicked smile played across her lips as she plucked a critical component from the cannon's guts, tucking it into a hidden pocket. On the front lines, Colonel Jake Riker stood on the bridge of his flagship, squeezing hard as he gripped the tactical display. The Tsenkethi fleet filled the view screen, a seemingly endless swarm of alien ships dripping with weapons. Jake's fists tight as he barked orders to his crew, directing the Earth fleet into a desperate defensive formation. Outmatched and outgunned, his soldiers fought with iron will, their weapons spitting defiance against the overwhelming odds. In the heart of the underground lab, alarms suddenly shrieked to life. Marcus whirled from the cannon's control panel, his eyes widening in disbelief as armed insurgents burst into the chamber, weapons leveled at him and his team. At their head strode General Damian Zorn, his chiseled features twisted into a mask of ruthless willpower. "Step away from the cannon, Dr. Scott," Zorn growled, his voice echoing through the cavernous lab. "That weapon is too powerful to belong to any one government. It must be seized for the greater good of all humanity." Marcus stood his ground, his loyal team rallying behind him. He fixed Zorn with an unwavering glare. "The cannon is Earth's only hope against the Tsenkethi. We can't afford to let it fall into the wrong hands. Not now." Zorn's men advanced, their weapons primed. Marcus's team tensed, ready for a fight. But before the standoff could erupt into violence, a deafening klaxon tore through the air. Marcus whirled back to the cannon's control panel, his eyes widening in horror at the cascading failures and system errors flashing across the screens. "No, no," he breathed, his fingers flying over the controls. "There's been sabotage. The cannon's matrices are destabilizing. If we fire it now—" His voice trailed off, the blood draining from his face. He turned to face Zorn and the insurgents, a grim commitment etched into his features. "We have to repair the damage now, or the consequences could be catastrophic. This is bigger than your power play, General. The fate of the entire universe is at stake." Zorn hesitated, doubt flickering across his face as he weighed Marcus's words. Behind him, the insurgents shifted uneasily, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Marcus turned back to the cannon, his team leaping into action beside him. They worked feverishly, sweat dripping from their brows as they raced to undo Mira's sabotage and stabilize the chrono-energy matrices. The air crackled with tension as the minutes ticked by, the fate of Earth and the universe hanging in the balance. On the front lines, Jake watched in awe and terror as the Tsenketi ships suddenly faltered, caught in the throes of the temporal distortions emanating from Earth. The alien crews aged centuries in mere seconds, their bodies withering and crumbling to dust. Ships torn apart by the chrono-energy shockwaves tumbled and exploded, littering the void with debris. In the heart of the underground lab, Marcus and his team stood before the time dilation cannon, their faces bathed in the eerie glow of the pulsing chrono-energy reactors. Marcus's hand hovered over the firing controls, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple. He knew that the cannon's power was almost unimaginable, and that each use risked unraveling the very fabric of reality itself. Zorn watched him closely, a newfound respect mingled with trepidation in his eyes. The insurgents lowered their weapons, the fight gone out of them in the face of the cannon's terrifying might. Marcus drew in a deep breath, his finger tightening on the trigger. He knew there would be consequences, knew that the cannon's use might doom them all, even as it saved them. But in that moment, he saw no other choice. Earth needed a miracle, and the time dilation cannon was the only miracle they had. He depressed the firing stud, and all of reality shuddered. The universe shuddered as the time dilation cannon's energy dissipated. Marcus lowered his hand from the firing controls, his eyes wide with shock at the weapon's devastating power. The lab fell silent, save for the hum of machinery and the rapid breathing of those present. General Zorn stepped forward, his face a mask of awe and fear. "My God, Scott, what have you done?" Before Marcus could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Dr. Amelia Sorensen burst into the room, her lab coat billowing behind her. "Marcus, we're detecting massive space-time anomalies. The cannon's effects are far more widespread than we anticipated." As Marcus and his team pored over the incoming data, Mira slipped away unnoticed. She activated a hidden communicator, her voice barely above a whisper. "Khazarax, the humans have unleashed their weapon. It's more powerful than we ever imagined. We need a new plan." On the front lines, Colonel Jake Riker watched in disbelief as the Tsenketi fleet disintegrated before his eyes. Sergeant Rafe Donaldson approached, his face grim. "Sir, we're receiving reports of temporal distortions across the sector. What are our orders?" Jake furrowed his eyebrows. "Hold position. We need to assess the full impact of the cannon before we make our next move." Back in the lab, Marcus's face paled as he analyzed the data. The space-time fabric is destabilizing. Each firing of the cannon increases the risk of a universal collapse. He turned to Zorn, his voice heavy. "General, we may have just signed our own death warrant." Zorn's communicator crackled to life. "Sir, we have reports of Tsenketi ships regrouping. They're rallying around a new flagship." As Earth's defenders grappled with the consequences of their actions, Mira met with Khazarax in a shadowy corner of the compound. The Tsenketi commander's alien features twisted with rage. "Your failure to destroy the cannon has cost us dearly, Mira." She held up a hand. "Not all is lost. I have made contact with General Zorn's rebel faction. They oppose the use of the cannon as much as we do. Together, we can neutralize this threat." Xarax's eyes narrowed. "Explain." In the heart of the compound, Marcus worked feverishly to unravel the mysteries of the cannon's effects. Amelia approached, her voice low. "Marcus, I've been analyzing the energy signatures. There's something strange about them. It's as if the cannon is tapping into an entirely new dimension of space-time." Before Marcus could respond, the lab doors burst open. General Zorn strode in, flanked by armed soldiers. "Dr. Scott, by order of Earth's unified command, I'm taking control of this facility. The time dilation cannon is too dangerous to remain in the hands of a single faction." Marcus stepped forward, his hands raised. "General, you don't understand. The cannon's power is growing exponentially. We need to find a way to safely dismantle it before... An explosion rocked the compound, cutting off Marcus's words. Alarms blared as smoke filled the corridors. Through the chaos, Mira and her team of Tsinkethi and human rebels advanced, weapons at the ready. Amelia grabbed Marcus's arm. We need to protect the cannon. If they destroy it without proper safeguards, the resulting temporal backlash could tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. As Marcus and his team raced to secure the cannon, Earth's political landscape erupted into turmoil. News of the weapon's power and its potential for catastrophe spread like wildfire. Factions formed, with some calling for the cannon's immediate use against the Tsinkethi, while others demanded its destruction. Amidst the chaos, a mysterious message appeared on communication channels across Earth and Tsinkethi space. Attention, citizens of the galaxy. We are the Chrono-Convergence. The time has come to end this destructive conflict. We possess the knowledge to harness temporal energies safely. Let us guide you towards a peaceful resolution. In the cannon's control room, Marcus stared at the message, his mind racing. The destiny of the universe hung in the balance, and the choices made in the coming hours would reshape the course of history. He turned to Amelia, his voice resolute. We need to find a way to stabilize the cannon. It's our only hope of preventing universal collapse. As Mira and her team drew closer, and political pressures mounted from all sides, Marcus knew that the true battle for the future of all sentient life was only just beginning. Marcus's words hung in the air as alarms blared throughout the compound. Amelia Sorensen's face was a mask of drive as she turned to face the assembled team. We don't have a choice, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. Earth's government is divided, but they're united on one thing. We need to use the cannon. Marcus opened his mouth to protest, but Amelia held up a hand. I know the risk, Marcus, but we're out of options. As Amelia's team prepared the cannon for deployment, Colonel Jake Riker stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the Tsinkethi fleet advance. His comm unit crackled to life, an unfamiliar voice filling the air. Colonel Riker, we are the Chrono-Convergence. We offer you the means to neutralize the time dilation cannon's effects and save your forces. Jake's eyes narrowed. And why should I trust you? Because without our aid, your fleet will be caught in the temporal crossfire. The choice is yours, Colonel. Jake hesitated for a moment, then nodded to his communications officer. Send them our coordinates. Let's see what they've got. As Jake's ships engaged the Tsinkethi fleet, strange devices materialized on their hulls. The air shimmered with localized time distortions, creating a protective bubble around the Earth vessels. Amelia's voice crackled over the comms. Cannon primed and ready to fire in 3, 2, 1. A blinding flash erupted from Earth's surface. The Tsinkethi ships at the vanguard of the attack froze mid-maneuver, caught in accelerated time loops. Their hulls aged centuries in seconds, metal crumbling to dust. On the Tsinkethi flagship, Kazarax snarled in fury. Activate the reality rift generator. We'll tear their precious cannon apart atom by atom. Deep within the Earth compound, Mira slipped through the shadows, a team of Zorn's former rebels at her back. They moved with purpose, making their way to the cannon's control room. The battle raged in space, Jake's ships darting between frozen Tsinkethi vessels. But as the reality rift generator powered up, the protective time bubbles began to flicker and fail. Mira burst into the control room, her weapon trained on Amelia. Step away from the controls! Amelia's hand hovered over the firing mechanism. You don't know what you're doing. Oh, I think I do, Mira replied, activating a device on her belt. The air crackled with energy as a rift tore open in the center of the room. Amelia and her team were sucked in, their screams cut short as the portal snapped shut. The cannon's systems flashed red, overloading from the surge of temporal energy. With a deafening boom, the chronomatrix exploded. In space, Jake watched in horror as the Tsinkethi ships broke free of their time loops. Energy weapons lanced out, pummeling Earth's defenseless fleet. This is it, Jake muttered, gripping the arms of his command chair. We're done for. Suddenly, the comm unit crackled to life. A familiar voice, distorted and echoing, filled the bridge. Not yet, you're not. Jake's eyes widened as he stared at the view screen. The time dilation cannon was glowing, pulsing with otherworldly energy. A figure materialized on the bridge, crackling with temporal energy. It was Marcus Scott, but changed. His eyes glowed with an unearthly light, his body seeming to phase in and out of reality. "Marcus?" Jake gasped. "What happened to you?" Marcus smiled, his voice resonating with power. "I've become one with the chronomatrix, Jake, and now it's time to end this war." He raised his hand, and the view screen filled with blinding light. The Tsenkethi fleet vanished, swallowed by a cosmic vortex of swirling time and space. As the light faded, Jake turned to Marcus, questions forming on his lips. But the transformed scientist was already fading, his form becoming translucent. "This isn't over, Jake," Marcus said, his voice growing distant. "The battle for time itself has only just begun." With those words, Marcus vanished, leaving Jake and his crew to stare at the empty void where the Tsenkethi fleet had been moments before. The silence on the bridge was deafening, broken only by the soft beep of consoles and the ragged breathing of the shocked crew. Jake sank back into his chair, his mind blown from what he had just witnessed. The war might be over, but he knew Marcus was right. Something far bigger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined was looming on the horizon. Horizon. Jake's comm unit crackled, breaking the tense silence on the bridge. "Colonel Riker, this is General Zorn. We need to talk." Jake's fist tight. "About what, General? Your failed coup?" "About the threat Marcus now poses to us all." Before Jake could respond, alarms blared across the ship. The tactical officer's voice rang out. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy fluctuations from both Earth and Tsenkethi space. All forces are pulling back." On the main view screen, Jake watched as ships from both sides retreated, leaving a vast emptiness where the battle had raged moments before. A new signal cut through the confusion, and a holographic figure materialized on the bridge. A woman with silvery hair and eyes that seemed to contain swirling galaxies. "I am Zarina of the Chronoconvergence," she announced, her voice echoing with otherworldly resonance. "Your Earth scientist, Marcus Scott, has become a living time vortex. If left unchecked, he will unravel the very fabric of reality." Jake's mind reeled. "How do we stop him?" Zarina's expression darkened. "That remains to be seen. But know this, the fate of all existence now hangs in the balance." On Earth, General Zorn strode through the corridors of his hidden base, Major Wesley Thorne at his side. "The singularity containment device is nearly ready, sir," Thorne reported. "Once we lure Scott in, his temporal energies will be trapped indefinitely." Zorn nodded grimly. "Good. We can't afford to let that abomination roam free any longer." Meanwhile, in the depths of Tsenkethi space, Kazarax faced a room full of furious military leaders. "You've doomed us all," one snarled. "The humans now wield a weapon beyond imagination." Drezhka, Kazarax's scientific advisor, stepped forward. "Not necessarily. I've discovered a way to harness the destabilized Noxthara sun. With enough power, we can create a subspace rift to banish both Scott and Earth from our reality." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Kazarax's eyes gleamed. "Begin preparations immediately." Across the galaxy, Dr. Amelia Sorensen and her team approached a swirling vortex of temporal energy. "That's got to be Marcus," she breathed, checking her readings. "We need to establish contact, find out if there's anything left of—" Her words cut off as reality warped around them. In an instant, Sorensen found herself back where she started, approaching the vortex again, and again, and again. "We're trapped in a time loop," her assistant cried out. Colonel Riker's voice crackled over their comms. "Hang tight, Sorensen. We're coming to get you out." As extraction teams raced to rescue Sorensen's group, the various factions converged on Marcus's nexus of power. Zorn's rebels clashed with chrono-convergence agents, while Tsenkethi forces maneuvered in the shadows. Amidst the chaos, Mira revealed her true allegiance. "I've worked too hard to let any of you destroy the balance," she declared, activating a device provided by Zarina. The air shimmered, and for a brief moment, Marcus's swirling form coalesced into something almost human. His eyes glowing with unearthly power, swept across the assembled forces. "What have I become?" he whispered, his voice distorted by temporal energies. Mira stepped forward. "Marcus, listen to me. Your power is tearing reality apart. You have to contain it now, before it's too late." Understanding dawned in Marcus's luminous gaze. With a cry of anguish, he unleashed a blast of chrono energy, intending to incapacitate the warring factions. But the temporal shockwave spiraled beyond his control, expanding outward at impossible speeds. As the wave of unsynchronized time swept towards them, Riker grabbed Sorensen's arm. "Run!" he shouted. But there was nowhere to run. The shockwave engulfed them, and the very concept of time began to unravel. Unravel. Riker's world splintered into a kaleidoscope of fractured moments, each shard a snapshot of possibility. In one instant, he stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching helplessly as the temporal shockwave engulfed everything in its path. In another, he found himself in the midst of a fierce ground battle, Tsenkethi's soldiers materializing and vanishing around him like ghosts. Through the chaos, a familiar voice cut through the madness. "Colonel, focus on my signal." Riker latched onto the sound, forcing his fragmented consciousness to coalesce. Reality snapped back into place, and he found himself standing in a shimmering bubble of stability. Zarina of the Chrono Convergence stood before him, her form flickering like a hologram. "What's happening?" Riker demanded, his head pounding. Zarina's eyes glowed with urgency. "Marcus has lost control. We must contain him before it's too late." As if in response to her words, the air crackled with energy. A swirling vortex of chrono energy coalesced, and within it, Riker glimpsed Marcus's tortured form. The scientist's body pulsed with otherworldly power, his very existence threatening to tear apart the fabric of space-time. "How do we stop this?" Riker asked, his voice barely audible over the roar of unraveling reality. Before Zarina could respond, the protective bubble shuddered under a barrage of weapons fire. Major Thorne's rebel forces had surrounded them, their intentions clear. "Surrender Scott to us!" Thorne's voice boomed through a megaphone. "We have the means to control his power." Zarina's eyes narrowed. "We cannot let them harness Marcus as a weapon. The consequences would be catastrophic." Riker nodded grimly, unholstering his sidearm. "Then we fight our way out." As Riker's loyalists engaged Thorne's rebels in a fierce firefight, Zarina worked to stabilize the chrononexus containing Marcus's godlike energies. The air shimmered with temporal distortions, reality itself buckling under the strain. Suddenly, a new threat emerged. Kazarax's voice crackled over the battlefield's comm systems. "Fools! While you squabble, we will end this once and for all." On the main view screen, Riker watched in horror as Drezhka's team initiated a catastrophic chain reaction within the nearby sun. The star's core began to destabilize, threatening to unleash an apocalyptic rift that would obliterate both Marcus and Earth. "We're out of time," Zarina said, her voice tight with tension. "I can open portals to outmaneuver the Tsenkethi, but someone needs to shut down that rift generator." Riker barked orders to his troops, coordinating their assault through Zarina's temporal gateways. As chaos engulfed the battlefield, he caught a glimpse of Mira slipping away from the fray, a triumphant gleam in her eyes. Before he could pursue, the air itself seemed to tear apart. Thorne's holding facility materialized at the epicenter of the conflict, a grotesque fusion of technology and temporal energy. Within its core, Riker saw Marcus's form, twisted and transformed into something monstrous. "Behold the untempered God-Eater!" Thorne's voice rang out, filled with maniacal glee. "With this, we will reshape the very foundations of reality." The abomination pulsed with power, devouring all temporal cohesion in an ever-expanding bubble of chaos. Riker watched in horror as his soldiers, Tsenkethi warriors, and even the fabric of space-time itself were consumed by the nightmarish creation. Zarina's eyes widened in realization. There's only one way to stop this. Before Riker could protest, the Chrono Convergence leader leapt towards the God-Eater. Her form shimmered and merged with the monstrosity, temporarily halting its inexorable expansion. "What have you done?" Riker shouted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of battle. Zarina's voice echoed from within the stasis-locked abomination, growing fainter with each word. "I've bought you time, Colonel. Use it wisely. The fate of all existence now rests in your hands." As Zarina's sacrifice took hold, an uneasy stillness settled over the battlefield. Riker stood at the precipice of an impossible decision, the weight of countless realities pressing down upon him. The God-Eater loomed before him, a ticking temporal bomb that threatened to unravel everything. And somewhere beyond the chaos, Kazarax's forces raced to complete their sun-destabilizing gambit. With Zarina gone and Marcus trapped within the abomination, Riker knew that his next move would determine the fate of not just Earth or the Tsenkethi, but of all existence across time and space. Riker's hand hovered over the temporal displacement controls, sweat beading on his forehead. The God-Eater pulsed ominously, its energies straining against Zarina's sacrifice. With a sharp intake of breath, he activated the device. Reality warped. The frozen nexus containing Zarina and the abomination vanished in a flash of blinding light. For a moment, silence reigned. Then chaos erupted. The displacement shockwave tore through Earth's solar system. On Mars, the colonial outpost shuddered. Metal rusted and crumbled to dust in seconds. Colonists screamed as their bodies twisted, some aging rapidly, while others regressed to infancy. "Sir," a technician shouted, "Mars is destabilizing." Riker watched in horror as a gaping maw of distorted space-time threatened to swallow the red planet whole. But before he could issue orders, Amelia Sorensen's voice crackled over the comms. "I'm rerouting power to the time dilation cannon," she announced, her words clipped and focused. "If I can just—" The view screen flashed. The Martian anomaly flickered, then stabilized. Riker allowed himself a moment of relief before alarms blared once more. A subspace conduit erupted into existence, disgorging Tsenkethi warships. At their head, Kazarax's flagship emerged, overflowing with weapons. "You thought you'd seen the last of us," Kazarax's voice boomed across all frequencies. "Now, witness the price of your arrogance." A sleek projectile launched from the Tsenkethi vessel, streaking towards Earth. Riker barked orders to intercept, but it was too late. The temporal warhead detonated. Earth fractured. Cities flickered in and out of existence, each trapped in its own pocket of warped time. In one reality, Zorn's rebels raised their flag over a burning Washington, D.C. In another, Tsenkethi troops marched through the streets of Tokyo. And in still others, the God-Eater's entropic fury consumed all in its path. Only the planet's core remained anchored, protected by a shimmering bubble of energy projected from the remnants of Sorensen's cannon. Amid the chaos, Major Thorne seized his opportunity. Chrono soldiers materialized across the fractured Earths, their weapons blazing with stolen Tsenkethi tech. Thorne's voice echoed across 1,000 realities. "The time has come. We will forge a single, glorious future from this broken world." Riker's fleet engaged the Tsenkethi forces, energy beams crisscrossing the void of space. But for every enemy ship they destroyed, another seemed to phase into existence from a parallel timeline. "We're outnumbered," Riker's tactical officer shouted. "We can't hold them off much longer." Just as all seemed lost, a familiar figure shimmered into existence on the bridge. Mira, her eyes glowing with temporal energy, raised her hands. "I can buy us time," she said, her voice resonating with power. "But not much." With a gesture, she froze a wave of incoming Tsenkethi fighters in mid-attack. But even as she did so, Thorne's chrono soldiers began to converge on Earth's temporal nexus. Suddenly, the fabric of reality itself seemed to buckle. A blinding chrono shockwave erupted from the heart of the temporal maelstrom. At its center, a figure coalesced. Marcus Scott, his form pulsing with cosmic energy. Sorensen's voice cut through the chaos. "Now! While Marcus anchors the timelines." She unleashed the full power of the time dilation cannon. Reality twisted, folded, and snapped back into place. The fractured Earths merged into one, but at a terrible cost. The planet itself vanished from its orbit, transformed into a swirling vortex of temporal energy. Kazarax's fleet blinked out of existence, scattered across time and space. Thorn's chrono army simply ceased to be, their temporal manipulations rendered obsolete. As the cosmic rebirth subsided, Riker stared at the view screen in awe and terror. Where Earth had once been, a planet-wide time vortex now hung in space, held together only by Marcus's will and Sorensen's calculations. Riker's comm crackled to life. Sorensen's voice, strained but determined, came through. "Colonel, we've averted total collapse, but Earth is gone. This vortex is all that remains. Marcus and I, we're the only things holding it stable." Riker's mind reeled at the implications. Humanity's homeworld, transformed into a cosmic anomaly, their very survival now dependent on maintaining an impossible balance. As if sensing his thoughts, Sorensen continued, "We'll need to establish new protocols, find a way to harness this power without destroying ourselves. The real work, it's only just beginning." Riker nodded grimly, knowing the challenges that lay ahead. He opened a channel to the remnants of his fleet, prepared to issue orders that would shape humanity's future among the stars. The swirling vortex of temporal energy hung in space, a testament to humanity's audacious attempt. Colonel Riker stood on the bridge of his flagship, his gaze fixed on the pulsing anomaly that had once been Earth. "Status report," he barked, turning to face Amelia Sorensen. The scientist's fingers danced across her console, her brow furrowed in concentration. "The singularity is stable, for now. Marcus is holding it together, but the strain on him is immense." Riker nodded grimly. "And our defenses?" "We've established a perimeter around the vortex," Sorensen replied, "but we're detecting temporal disturbances throughout the system. It's as if the very fabric of time is unraveling around us." A proximity alarm blared, cutting through the tense atmosphere on the bridge. Riker's tactical officer shouted, "Sir, multiple contacts emerging from subspace." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a nightmarish sight. Tsenkethi warships, their hulls twisted and warped by chrono energy, phased into existence. At their head, a monstrous vessel pulsed with otherworldly power. "Kazarax," Riker growled, recognizing the alien warlord's flagship. The comm system crackled to life, and Kazarax's voice filled the bridge. "Did you think you could escape us so easily, humans? We have mastered technologies beyond your comprehension. Your precious Earth will be ours." Riker opened his mouth to respond, but another alarm cut him off. Sorensen's eyes widened in shock as she studied her readings. "Colonel, we've got multiple incursions planetside. It's Thorn's forces." The view screen split, showing chaos erupting across the surface of the time vortex planet. Chrono soldiers materialized in flashes of light, engaging Riker's defense forces in brutal combat. "How is this possible?" Riker demanded. Sorensen's fingers flew across her console. "They're using my own calculations against us." Thorn found a way to exploit the blind spots in Marcus's control. As if summoned by her words, a figure shimmered into existence on the bridge. Mira, her eyes glowing with temporal energy, stumbled forward. "Colonel," she gasped, steadying herself against a nearby console. I've made a terrible mistake." Riker's hand instinctively went to his sidearm, but he held back. "Explain yourself, quickly." Mira's words tumbled out in a rush. "I thought I could control it all, play both sides. But Thorn, he's gone mad with power. And Kazarax, he's acquired weapons that could tear apart the very fabric of time itself." Sorensen stepped forward, her expression a mix of suspicion and curiosity. "What are you proposing?" "A last-ditch effort," Mira replied. "The convergence, what's left of it, we have a plan, but it will require sacrifices from all of us." Riker's comm chirped, and Sergeant Donaldson's voice came through, thick with static. "Colonel, we can't hold them much longer. These bastards are popping in and out of time faster than we can target them." The ship rocked as Kazarax's fleet opened fire, their chrono weapons distorting the very space around Riker's vessels. Alarms blared as systems began to fail. Riker looked from Mira to Sorensen, then back to the view screen where Earth's temporal vortex pulsed ominously. He made his decision. "Whatever your plan is, we're running out of options," he said to Mira. What do you need from us? Mira's eyes gleamed with a mixture of relief and commitment. Your mind, Colonel, and the minds of your most trusted soldiers. We're going to turn Thorn's tactics against him and create a force capable of fighting across all of time itself. As Mira began to explain the intricacies of the temporal anchoring process, Riker felt the weight of countless futures pressing down upon him. He knew that his next actions would determine not just the fate of Earth, but of all existence across the cosmic tapestry of time and space. The battle for Earth's singularity had only just begun. The Galactic Empire's surrender brought no relief to the embattled forces defending Earth's temporal vortex. As the dust settled from their Pyrrhic victory, Colonel Riker surveyed the swirling maelstrom that had once been humanity's homeworld. "Status report," he barked, his eyes never leaving the pulsating anomaly on the display. Amelia Sorensen's fingers danced across her console. "The singularity remains unstable, sir. Marcus's consciousness is the only thing holding it together. But the strain—" She trailed off, her brow furrowed in concentration. A proximity alert blared. Riker spun to face his tactical officer. "What now?" "Multiple temporal incursions detected planetside," the officer reported. "Chrono signatures match Thorn's forces." Riker's fists tight. Of course, Thorn wouldn't give up so easily. "Deploy the strike team," he ordered, "and get me Mira." As if summoned by his words, the chrono convergence agent materialized on the bridge in a shimmer of temporal energy. "Already here, Colonel," she said, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "My remaining agents are moving to intercept Thorn's operatives." The view screen flickered, showing flashes of combat across Earth's fractured surface. Riker's temporally anchored soldiers engaged Thorn's guerrillas in a deadly dance through shifting pockets of time. "We can't keep this up forever," Riker muttered. Sorensen's voice cut through his thoughts. "Sir, we're detecting massive chrono disturbances in the 29th century. It's Kazarax. He's back." The bridge erupted into chaos as alarms blared. The view screen shifted to show a nightmarish fleet emerging from a temporal rift, their ships dripping with weapons Riker had never seen before. "How?" Riker demanded. "We destroyed his forces." Mira's eyes widened in realization. He must have escaped through time, acquired advanced technology from the future. Kazarax's face appeared on the screen, his alien features twisted in a cruel smile. "Did you think you could escape me so easily, humans? Your precious Earth will burn across all of time." The Tsenkethi warlords' ships opened fire, their weapons tearing holes in the fabric of reality itself. The vortex shuddered, and Marcus's pained cry echoed through the ship's systems. "We're losing him!" Sorensen shouted, her hands flying across her console. "The singularity is destabilizing." In that moment of crisis, a young man stepped forward. Michael Derricks, barely out of his 20s, spoke with a confidence that belied his years. "Dr. Sorensen, what if we use the singularity itself as a weapon? An anti-entropic pulse could realign the fractured timelines." Sorensen's eyes lit up. Yes, it could work. But the risks— Her words were cut short as Kazarax unleashed his last-ditch effort. An artificial singularity detonated within the vortex, its shockwave threatening to tear Marcus's tether apart. Riker watched in horror as Earth's temporal vortex began to unravel. In that moment, he knew there was only one choice. "Do it," he ordered Sorensen. "Whatever it takes." Sorensen nodded grimly, her fingers flying across the controls. The remnants of the time dilation cannon hummed to life, channeling the raw power of Earth's singularity. A blinding pulse of energy erupted from the vortex, washing over Kazarax's fleet. The Tsenkethi ships disintegrated, their atoms scattered across time and space. For a moment, silence reigned. Then reality itself seemed to scream. The anti-entropic pulse tore open fissures in subspace, creating a cascade of multiversal proportions. Marcus Scott's consciousness fractured, scattering across infinite realities. As the shockwave subsided, Riker stared at the view screen in disbelief. Earth's vortex had stabilized, but at what cost? "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth, but it's different." The screen flickered to life, revealing a face Riker knew all too well. But this wasn't the Amelia Sorensen standing beside him. This woman's eyes held a cold, ruthless gleam. "Colonel Riker," the alternate Sorensen spoke, her voice dripping with contempt. "I believe we have some matters to discuss regarding the future of our world." Riker exchanged a glance with Mira, both understanding the gravity of their situation. They had saved their Earth, only to find themselves facing a new threat from a parallel reality. "Prepare a strike team," Riker ordered, his voice grim. "We're going in." Riker stepped through the shimmering portal, his strike team close behind. The world around them twisted and warped, reality itself seeming to fracture and reassemble with each passing moment. They found themselves in a nightmarish landscape, a patchwork of alternate timelines stitched together like some cosmic quilt gone horribly wrong. Mira stumbled, her eyes wide with shock. "The multiversal fracturing, it's worse than we imagined." Before Riker could respond, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Colonel, over here!" Sergeant Donaldson emerged from behind a twisted piece of wreckage, his face haggard but determined. He was accompanied by a small group of resistance fighters, their weapons trained on the newcomers. "Stand down," Donaldson ordered his people. "These are friendlies, I think." Riker approached cautiously. "Sergeant, what happened here?" Donaldson's laugh was bitter. "What didn't happen, sir? Sorensen, she went off the deep end, used the time dilation cannon to remake this world in her image." As if on cue, a patrol of temporal guardians marched past, their bodies a horrific fusion of human and chrono energy. The resistance fighters shrank back into the shadows, but the guardians paid them no mind, their eyes fixed on some distant point. "We need to move," Donaldson whispered. "I know a safe house nearby." As they made their way through the fractured cityscape, Mira's eyes darted from one reality to another. "Thorn," she hissed suddenly, "he's here, or rather, everywhere." Riker's hand tightened on his weapon. "Explain." "He's made some kind of deal with Sorensen," Mira said. "I can sense his presence across multiple timelines. He's after the reactor core." They reached the safe house, a nondescript building that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. Inside, Donaldson's resistance had set up a makeshift command center. "The time dilation cannon's chronoreactor," Donaldson explained, pointing to a holographic map. "It's the linchpin holding this twisted reality together. We destroy it, we might have a chance to reset things." Riker studied the map, his mind racing. "It won't be easy. Sorensen's guardians will be all over it." "Not to mention Thorn's forces," Mira added. "They'll be making their move soon." A plan began to form in Riker's mind. "We'll need a diversion. Donaldson, can your people draw away the guardians?" The sergeant nodded grimly. "We'll give 'em hell, sir." "Mira, you focus on countering Thorn. The rest of us will make for the reactor core." As they geared up for the assault, reality itself seemed to shudder around them. Riker caught glimpses of other timelines, worlds where Earth had never fallen, where the time dilation cannon had never been built. But those realities were fading, consumed by the chrono-energy maelstrom centered on the reactor. They moved out under the cover of darkness, the city a maze of shifting architecture and temporal anomalies. Donaldson's resistance struck first, drawing the attention of Sorensen's guardians with a series of explosive diversions. Riker led his team through the chaos, Mira at his side. They fought their way through pockets of Thorn's loyalists, each engagement a surreal dance through fractured time and space. As they approached the reactor complex, a familiar figure materialized before them. Sorensen, or rather, the twisted version of her that ruled this timeline. Her eyes glowed with an unholy light, her body pulsing with chrono energy. "Welcome, Colonel," she said, her voice echoing across multiple realities. "I've been expecting you." Behind her, the reactor core thrummed with power, a swirling vortex of temporal energy that threatened to consume everything. And trapped within it, barely visible, was the fragmented consciousness of Marcus Scott. Riker raised his weapon, but Sorensen merely laughed. With a wave of her hand, reality itself bent to her will. The strike team found themselves surrounded by temporal guardians, former comrades now turned into chrono abominations. You really thought you could stop me? Sorensen sneered. I am become time itself. But even as she spoke, Mira's eyes widened in realization. Marcus, she whispered. He's still in there, fighting her control. Riker saw it too. A flicker of humanity in the swirling vortex, a spark of defiance against Sorensen's iron will. He knew what had to be done. Overload the reactor, he ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. It's our only chance. As Donaldson and his team engaged the Guardians, Riker and Mira fought their way towards the reactor controls. Thorne's forces converged on their position, adding to the melee. Reality itself began to unravel around them as Riker input the overload sequence. The reactor core pulsed with increasing intensity, chrono energy cascading in blinding torrents. Sorensen screamed in rage and fear as her carefully constructed world began to crumble. What have you done? She shrieked, her form beginning to dissolve. The last thing Riker saw before the world went white was Marcus Scott's consciousness breaking free, a final act of defiance against the forces that sought to control him. Then oblivion. Riker awoke with a start, his pupils dilating from the psychic backlash of countless alternate realities collapsing. He found himself on a familiar bridge, surrounded by his crew. Earth hung in the view screen, whole and untouched. But something was different. The time dilation cannon was gone, reduced to scattered debris. And there, at the science station, stood Amelia Sorensen. Not the twisted tyrant they had faced, but the brilliant scientist he had known. She turned to him, her eyes haunted by memories of things that never were. Colonel, she said softly, I remember. All of it. Riker nodded grimly, understanding the weight of those phantom memories. They had averted catastrophe, but at what cost? As the crew began to take stock of their new reality, a faint whisper seemed to echo through the ship's systems. For a moment, Riker thought he saw a familiar face reflected in the view screen. Marcus Scott, unbound by time and space, a latent power waiting to be awakened once more. The danger had passed for now, but Riker knew that as long as the secrets of chronoscience existed, the temptation to reshape reality would always remain. He turned to his crew, ready to face whatever challenges this reforged timeline might bring.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.